I will call the meeting to order now. Welcome to meeting number 29 of the Standing Committee of Veterans Affairs.
Adopted on Monday, November 21st, 2022, the committee is resuming its study on the impact of the new rehabilitation contract awarded by the Department of Veterans Affairs on the role of the case manager and quality of service delivery. La réunion d'aujourd'hui.
Today's meeting is in hybrid form pursuant to the order adopted by the House on June 23rd, 2022. So there are some members who will be participating in person, or others will be participating through Zoom. A few pieces of information to remind you. Before speaking, I will give you the floor, and if you are online and not speaking, please keep your mics closed. Do not activate them. And I would remind all members that you must speak questions through the chair.
Please raise your hand. And for members in Zoom, please raise the hand function. Veuillez noter qu'un témoin.
Also, please note that one witness has not been able to join us today, but that witness did want to submit a brief to the members of the committee. The brief is presently being translated.
Now, I would like to welcome our witnesses. Mais tout d'abord, je veux saluer.
But first of all, I would like to point out the presence of Mr. Francisco Sobera, our colleague who is here to replace Ms. Richie Valdez.
We have Patricia Moran, occupational therapist and clinical care manager by video conference. From the Royal Canadian Legion, Caroline Hughes, acting director of Veterans Services, National Headquarters, and from Wounded Warriors Canada, Scott Maxwell, Executive Director by video conference. And now I'd like to invite Mrs. Patricia Moran. You have 5 minutes, so please look at me. When you have 1 minute less, I'm going to inform you. And when your time is over, I got new, eh? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Okay, please.
You've been busy.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Moran, you have 5 minutes or less for your opening statement. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for inviting me to speak today. I was asked to speak today as a service provider who may be impacted by the new rehabilitation contract. By way of background, I am a registered occupational therapist in the province of Ontario and have been since 1982. I have been a service provider for Veterans Affairs Canada for well over 20 years. I have provided services as a field occupational therapist, or FOT for short, during that time, and have had an additional role as a clinical care manager, or a CCM, since 2018. It is the role of the CCM that I will speak of today, because this is the role that is for veterans who have complex needs and who are in the rehabilitation program. CCM referrals in the past were made by the veterans case manager. Involvement with the veterans varies depending on their needs and can include things such as helping the veteran reconnect with services in the community, assisting the veteran to re-engage in community activities, or working with the veteran to facilitate re-engagement with their daily activities. The veterans I have seen through this role have multiple needs within the realms of physical barriers, social barriers, and mental health struggles. As a CCM, I work in conjunction with other people working with the veteran, including psychologists, social workers, family physicians when needed, in the past, the March of Dimes vocational staff when needed, case managers, and those who may be involved with the veteran through community agencies or community services. To date, I have not been able to identify how the CCM role and subsequently my role as this provider may be impacted by the new contract. I received an email in the summer asking about my expression of interest, and I expressed interest. I subsequently received an email from the new provider in late September asking me to complete a data collection form. Upon reviewing the form, I noted that there was no selection for OT or CCM, and as such was unsure if I should complete it. I reached out to the contact person with the new provider and subsequently spoke with that person and was also directed to a link through Veterans Affairs. Unfortunately, to date, my questions remain unanswered. As an OT who has been providing clinical care management to veterans with complex needs who are in the rehab program, my questions include the following. Will the CCM role be used? If yes, will an OT still provide this role? If yes, will this need be done under the umbrella of the new provider, or can this be done autonomously as it has been done in the past? If this must be done under the umbrella of the new provider, will there be changes to the compensation structure? As a service provider for Veterans Affairs Canada for well over 20 years, I have always worked through my private practice, and I am unclear at this time whether the new provider will use only providers under their umbrella or whether independent providers such as myself will have any role to play. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Moran. And now let's go to Mrs. Caroline Hughes for 5 minutes or less. Please open your mic.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chairman and members of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, it is a great pleasure to appear in front of your committee on behalf of our over 250,000 members and their families. I'm the Acting Director of Veteran Services at National Headquarters of the Legion, and I'm also a retired military healthcare administrator. I've been assisting veterans, including still serving members, veterans who have retired, RCMP members included, and their families for about 16 years in various roles in and out of uniform. Since 1926, we have been assisting veterans and their families with representation to Veterans Affairs Canada and with the Veterans Review and Appeal Board for disability entitlement and treatment for their service-related injuries and illnesses. Our 27 professional command service officers across the country and their assistants are trained professionals, government security cleared, and provide free assistance to those they need to help, whether they are a Legion member or not. This past year, they met, spoke with, and assisted thousands of veterans and their families in obtaining VAC benefits and services that they deserve for their service injuries and illnesses. As such, I believe we can speak confidently and with credibility about what we are seeing and hearing about the rehabilitation contract. Veterans Affairs Canada case managers establish relationships and help veterans to determine and to help them with their individual goals, to assess if there are any barriers to achieve these, and to identify the available information and services for the veteran in order to achieve these. Public Services and Procurement Canada awarded the national contract to Partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services in June 2021 on behalf of Veterans Affairs. Under the contract, we have been advised that case managers will continue to work directly with veterans and their families to ensure the best possible outcomes for health and well-being. These are at the heart of what we want for our veterans and their families and what they deserve. The new contract intent, from our understanding, is to reduce administrative burdens and to provide more time to assist veterans facing complex challenges. We believe the contract could be beneficial as long as it does improve these services and overall health and well-being for veterans and their families by allowing the case managers to spend more time with them instead of administration functions. So far to date, we haven't received any complaints. However, the Legion continuously monitors the quality of services provided to veterans for the impact on those who we serve. We see this contract may be a positive step in focusing personal efforts on health and well-being of veterans, and this must be paramount in any arrangements. Chairman, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions later.
Okay, thank you so much. And now, Mr. Scott Maxwell, the floor is yours for 5 minutes or less.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for the time. Wounded Warriors Canada is a national mental health service provider that supports approximately 3,000 members of the Canadian Armed Forces, veterans, first responders, and their families every year. We do this. Our specialty is group-based, residentially facilitated group counseling that supports our members and our clients in their healing journey on their path, mainly when it comes to veterans on their transition to civilian life. So our big thing with VAC has always been about the couple of things that we interact with most commonly when it comes to the clients that we're serving, who are VAC clients, is the wait times, the cultural competency of the care, and how adding new service providers would actually amend or repair what's going on in the system right now. So I'd like to, our big concern is simply focused around those focus areas, is that when we're talking all the time, and we've been doing seemingly for the last 10 years, about wait times, is a kind of a contract like this going to address wait times? Is it going to address the cultural competency of the care? Is it going to address the timely access to care? And it's going to be robust enough to support the unique needs, not only of our veterans, but of their families. That is what we deal with. That's who we support here at Wounded Warriors Canada. And the one area of concern that we have with what has happened with this contract is, of course, not being consulted at all. I mean, it's interesting when we support the population that we do, so many of which are VAC clients, that there's no consultation of this particular agreement. We hear from the new provider thereafter, and what's that relationship going to be like going forward? So I do find it interesting that we have heard from LifeMark and folks now who we've never heard from before. I would like some answers to these questions as to why that is, how these decisions were made, what is their level of cultural competency for the care they're going to provide? Because let's get this straight. If you do not serve this population the right way, at the right time, we continue to see the demonstrative gaps that form. And when they fall into these gaps, that's not just the members themselves, but their families. We continue as a country to see the fallout of those effects. So that's what I'm interested in discussing. That's what we're here to learn from. And I look forward to the opportunity to have the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So it's wonderful. It was less than 5 minutes for all our witnesses. So now let's go to the first round of questions. And I'd like members to address your question, to name what witnesses do you address your question. And I invite the first Vice President of the committee, Mr. Blake Richards, for 6 minutes or less.
Sure. Let me start. First of all, thank you to all of you for sharing your experiences with us today. I've got some specific questions, but the first thing I'd like to do is just ask each of you just to give me a quick yes or no to the following question. Were you consulted in this decision to move to an independent contractor on this? Were you consulted? Yes or no? Each of you?
No.
So all three
No,
witnesses.
not by Veterans Affairs.
All three witnesses have indicated no. And maybe a yes or no to this question as well. Do you feel like you have enough information about this process and what's going to transpire starting 2 days ago?
No.
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 So I think I got 3 no's again there. I'm not surprised by that because everything I've heard from everyone, whether it be service providers, veterans, even the employees at Veterans Affairs themselves are telling us they don't feel they were consulted. They don't feel like they have information about something that now is in place as of 2 days ago, in my understanding, unless they've extended the date again. And so nobody seems to know anything. Let me start, Mr. Maxwell. You made asked a series of questions at the end of your remarks. The last question you asked was about the level of cultural competency, and you were asking questions. I'm going to ask you in relation to that. What should the level of cultural competency be? What is required to ensure that these people that will be now working with veterans? What's required in terms of education, training, and competency in order for them to be able to best serve our veterans?
You hit the nail on the head, Mr. Richards. The word is training. How do we expect or anticipate people, civilians, who are the majority of the case managers, to support the ill and injured population if they're not trained on cultural competency, just generally with the occupation around the unique needs of this population? It's never happened. I've understood that there's training happening as a result of some recent headlines. Don't know what that training looks like. Don't know what it is. We've offered our occupational awareness training and our trauma exposed professional training into VAC with no response. So, to me, if you're going to put civilians in front of this population, training has to be at the forefront of their role. And unfortunately, it's not been the case. I've not seen it to be the case in 10 years. And I would suggest for the department that be the focus for today going forward.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think you're absolutely right. That's critically important, and it was interesting. You note that you've offered, you have training that you have available, and you've offered it to Veterans Affairs, and haven't even received a response in terms of your offer.
This is the situation that followed MAID, the tragic story around MAID, and the story that continues. We received phone calls and outreach from the department on their behalf and responded in kind. Obviously, we are a provider, a partner of the Department of Veterans Affairs Canada as a service provider to the population. And we just await the ongoing dialogue and conversation about how we can offer our training into case managers throughout Veterans Affairs Canada.
You brought up the topic of MAID. I have some other questions along this area as well, but if I can just go down that trail for just a second. What do you think is required to ensure that the news stories that we've been hearing and what we've been hearing about veterans being offered and in some cases pressured about the utilization of MAID? What do you think is required to ensure that sort of thing doesn't happen again, and how does Veterans Affairs go about making sure that happens?
Well, I mean, as I've said all along from the first, from when the story broke, frankly, I mean, obviously we have to be very careful and watchful of two things. One is that no veteran experiences and their family experiences this ever again. Two, that veterans who became aware of it don't feel comfortable always to reach out for the help that they're entitled to receive. First thing. Second, about how to prevent it. I mean, this is an extreme situation, generally on the fringe of some of the challenges that affect the department. Understanding that, I mean, as we've said right after learning of this, is that if we're not preparing case managers, people to interact with, support, have these complex and difficult conversations that they're having every day with ill and injured veterans, then, what are we ever going to expect that could be an outcome or a result of this not happening? So our position has been clear that, this is an extreme situation. It should never happen again. We got to make sure we take care of that veteran and their family. and we got to support the veterans that might feel concerned about contacting the department thereafter, as we are doing right now. But beyond that, I mean, my goodness, what can we ever look to expect or receive when we're not providing the proper training that I would say, and I feel for at times, the case managers. If they're asked to do this job, they're coming in to do this job, they care about the work that they do and how they do it, then we should be there to provide them with the resourcing that they deserve to help the population that they're serving.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
I certainly hope the Minister of Veterans Affairs is listening, because this is really important.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. And now let's go to MP Torrance Rogers for 6 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, welcome to all of the witnesses today. It's good to have you here, and looking for you to provide some answers to some of our questions. During some previous meetings, we've had some concerns expressed by witnesses to this committee, and we also heard from some of the other officials from VAC about what's being done to prepare to transition to this new system. But there seems to be concerns expressed about how it's going to work and how it's going to be implemented and so on. Seems to be that it's not going to be done in one event. It's going to be a phased event, which is going to see the system transferred to try to remove some of the administrative burden on case managers. And if you look at some of the rationale being provided, it seems to make some sense. But of course, what makes most sense is that what's the best service we can provide for veterans, which is what we want to do here as a committee and as an organization. So, Ms. Hughes, if I could, I'll ask you some questions here. As Veterans Affairs Canada provided you with information about this new contract?
No, they have not. Not directly from Veterans Affairs, no.
Okay. So, were you ever a part of any consultations that took place? We were told by some officials that there were, over 60 different consultation pieces that took place. So, were you ever a part of any of that?
I was not. I took over this role in May of this year, so I'm not sure if my predecessor had, but he never passed anything on to me. So I am assuming, no, we have not been consulted.
So then it's possible that your predecessor may have been involved in some of the consultation. It's just that you're not aware.
No, and he would have passed it on to me. We sat for days going over his files and things that he was working on. So I highly doubt we were ever consulted.
Okay. So in your opinion, then, looking at the contract, and will this contract provide good rehab or medical and psychosocial services to Canadians' veterans, or Canada's veterans, of course? And do you believe that veterans have been receiving good services under the previous contracts or system?
It's hard to have an opinion one way or the other, because I have had really, really good stories, and I have heard some bad stories about case managers. We are not healthcare providers or professionals in any kind of service, such as occupational therapy, any of treatments like that. So I'm hesitant to say if the contract will be beneficial to those. Our main concern is that the veterans receive the benefits and the treatment that they deserve in a timely manner, of course, and that we'll be monitoring for that just to make sure that that happens. How they get that treatment, whether it's a third party or an internal, we're not concerned one way or the other, as long as they are getting the help they need.
So, Ms. Moran, you mentioned that you acknowledged you've been in the business supporting service to veterans for 20 plus years. And you're not quite sure what your future role will be with any of the new providers. I'm surprised to hear that, given your experience and support service you provided. So I guess I'll give you another opportunity to say what you might expect from this new contract and how it might impact you and your in your practice?
Well, I think I mean, certainly in terms of, I have a couple of roles with veterans, and the role within rehab is the clinical care manager role. So at this point, I'm not sure if that role will continue. And so I may not have a role. I really don't know at this point, and I've not been able to get clarification. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have enough information to know.
Oh, I understand and appreciate that. You know, we hear numbers like there's going to be 14,000 veterans serviced by this new contract group organization, and 9,000 service providers, from people with your expertise to others, from, you know, regular medical doctors and personnel and so on and so on. So, you know, it sure seems that you could fit the bill for a lot of that. So I'll ask you again, Ms. Hughes, does it make sense for Veterans Affairs Canada to provide these kinds of services in-house, as they've been currently doing, or as some witnesses have claimed to this committee?
From my understanding, there's a bit of an echo. There will be case managers still. They will still have a function. Some of the administrative stuff is being sent to the third party. And from what I understand, the service providers that they have now, whether it's a massage therapist or anything, that they're going to continue with those. It's just going to be another third party administering, you know, the administration part of it, the paperwork. So,
thank you, Mr.
As far
Chair.
as I know, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Mrs. Hughes. Maintenant, nous allons passer.
Now we will go to the second vice chair, Mr. Luc Vézillet, for the next 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair, and hello. Ms. Hughes, you are in an acting position now. What was your previous position? Thank you. So it's 7 months now that you have been in the acting position. Am I correct?
J'ai bien entendu tantôt quand vous avez dit.
I heard earlier when you said that you were never personally consulted. Is that the case?
Yes, that is the case.
Et vous avez aussi dit que votre
And you also said that your predecessor didn't inform you about whether or not he was consulted. Is that the case?
That's the case, but if he had known of this, he would have contacted me. He would have passed that on to me before he left. We're still in contact today on various items, so if he had been contacted, I would know of it.
Donc vous êtes convaincu.
So you are quite convinced that your predecessor was not updated about the fact that there would be some suppliers that would be, shall we say, laid off because of this contract?
No.
Okay. Et la transition.
And is the transition going smoothly with your predecessor? You communicate with him?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Mes questions, je les.
I'm asking you these questions because I was very surprised, and it surprises my colleagues as well, because we were told by the people from the department that there were at least 100 people that were consulted before the setup of this program. Is that possible, or were we misunderstood?
I cannot answer that. I can just say that I wasn't contacted, neither was my predecessor.
Parfait.
Perfect. I understand. You alluded earlier to the quality of service. How do you think your service can evaluate the quality of service that would be offered by the new firm? How could it be done? Through interviews with professionals, through grids? How do you think it would be done?
So we would hear directly from our veterans that we deal with on a daily basis from across the country. We have 27 professional service officers that have that help veterans daily, whether it's to obtain treatment benefits through VAC, first applications for disability, entitlement for various claims, and they're not shy. If they're not getting the service that they need and deserve, we will hear about it.
Excusez-moi, monsieur.
I'm sorry, Mr. Desilets.
You raise your hand, but maybe that one of the members will ask you a question.
Ça me fait
So
plaisir,
do
M.
not
Maxwell.
hesitate.
Je m'excuse, vous êtes dans...
Oh, I apologize. You're in the corner of the screen. Mr. Maxwell, if you want to answer as well. Thank you. I stopped the clock.
Support what Carolyn's saying, because Carolyn's,
Okay.
I'm with her. We stand there together. I just wanted, if, I don't know if this is the forum for it, but just offering some input. So let me know if I'm able to do that. My question, my point was more around the fact that let's not worry so much about who was consulted or how we were consulted, because it's clear that we were not consulted. But the most important part about this process, I would say, going forward, is what is going to be the impact and the effect on the population going forward. The decision has been made, rightly or wrongly, but we have to, as a committee, look at some and ask, as individuals on this committee and as a department and as a government, as a country, about what kind of services are going to change. I mean, we've been talking about the backlog on the VAC, the disability claim situation a month ago. What is it, 25,000 now that wait in adjudication? We're talking about the cultural competency of the care, how it's received and how it's delivered. I mean, we're not so much concerned about who is providing it, but how it's provided.
Monsieur Maxwell, je comprends.
Mr. Maxwell, I certainly understand your concern, and that is part of our concern here in the committee. I see that there's a new structure that has been put in place that isn't necessarily taking into account what the people who have expertise already know. So that's why I asked, how would you evaluate these persons who will be offering future services? That is a concern. I don't know if you want to add something to that, but I hear that you question veterans, but I'm not asking children whether or not the teacher is good, because the teacher is supposed to do her job. So I ask my question again, Ms. Hughes. Well, how do you think?
Can someone help? I can't hear the trend.
I'm sorry.
Now, si je...
Now, if I speak in French, can you hear me? Can you hear me in English? English.
I just didn't understand the French. The translation, please.
Okay, but now, listen, I'm going to speak in French and let me know if the translation is okay.
Is everything okay now? Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me now?
But listen, on the bottom of your screen,
Yeah.
you have a globe, I should say, and you should choose...
Yeah, I got it now. Yeah,
you get it. Okay, maintenant...
try it again.
Now, if I speak to you in French, can you hear me clearly in English? Are you hearing the English interpreter?
In my ear, but I'm not seeing the translation, unfortunately, so my apologies for that.
D'accord. Mais ce qu'on va faire...
Okay, but what we're going to do is this.
Call you quickly, so you'll be able to... But I think that the question was addressed to Mrs. Hughes instead of you.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Un petit peu de temps, Monsieur le Président.
Can you give me some time? Yes, I've stopped the clock, Mr. Desilets. I've stopped the clock. It's the first thing that I did, and I can tell you that you have 1 minute, 10 seconds left. 1:30 would be better. Ms. Hughes, I'm going to ask you my question again. You know, when a minister does his work, there are a lot of people, and doesn't do perhaps the work as well as he should. There are people behind who, say, an ombudsperson, who is there, who watches and comes back with recommendations to improve. My question is this. So, according to this contract, who is going to assess the services? How will it be done?
I'm not sure what you're asking because we don't know one-on-one what types of services a veteran necessarily is receiving. My concern is more that they get the services they need. When a veteran is denied a certain service, let's say they want to have massage therapy, and Veterans Affairs say, no, it's not, you're not eligible for it. That's where we can step in and say, well, based on your condition, it's reasonable, and we can work with them to get that overturned at the department. So whether we're doing that through Veterans Affairs directly, we would probably actually continue to still do it through Veterans Affairs directly and have them speak with the contractor to get it clarified. Right now, they're doing that through Medivie Blue Cross. So from my understanding, it won't be much different than that.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you.
We also have monthly meetings with Veterans Affairs Canada.
Yeah.
So I often bring up various things that we're seeing.
Okay,
and
thank
have
you.
concerns about.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes. And now I'd like to invite Ms. Bliney for 6 minutes or less. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Chair, and I want to thank all the members, folks here that are our witnesses for all that you do for veterans. I really appreciate it. And of course, Ms. Hughes, I'd like to acknowledge your service to our country. I deeply respect that service. So I would like to first come to Ms. Moran, if I can. I guess the first thing that I would like is a bit of, I appreciate your testimony. I'm just trying to get the timeline a little bit more clearer for myself. So what I understand is that the first step was that you were asked to provide an expression of interest, which you did. Can you tell us about when that was?
You know what? I think that was around August. It was this summer because I had a response back from the contact person in September. And that's when they asked me about the form, completing the data completion form, which I still haven't. Yeah.
And so you still haven't completed filling the form, is that correct? Because there's just no room to put OT or CM, is that correct?
That's right. Like I do not have an understanding of really what their format is going to be, or again, whether this role or whether there will be an OT role or a clinical care manager role, I'm not sure. So I don't know.
And so you asked that question, and did they respond to that question?
I didn't get an answer. Yeah.
You didn't receive an answer?
No.
So you've been providing these services for over 20 years. I guess after 20 years, you have a pretty comprehensive understanding of how to work with veterans. And I think Mr. Maxwell talked about it earlier, that cultural knowledge. When you've been doing it for a long time, you would definitely have developed that, I would assume. And so we don't know if you're going to be on that list as a provider because you're not getting answers back from VAC.
Well, that's right. And also I'm a private provider, right? So I'm not, I'm a fee for service OT, and Veterans Affairs refer if they want me to see a veteran. That's how it works, being a service provider. And I do have a lot of experience, and I have worked directly with Veterans Affairs. So I'm not sure with the new provider whether I will still be able to do that, or whether I will have to provide service under the umbrella of the new provider. And I mean, I've worked in lots of different areas, not just with veterans, and my experience is when that happens, the whole fee structure changes.
So sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's really interesting. So I've done a bit of research and had some conversations, and I've heard from a couple of service providers that they are very concerned because, of course, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the process that has been in place is that the provider goes directly to Blue Cross, bills, and then they are reimbursed. And what we're hearing is the new process is that service providers will be going to PCVRS, and they will be billing VAC, and so the timeline gets longer because until they get the money from VAC, the service provider doesn't get the amount. And what we're actually hearing is what once used to be a $195 fee, they are now only willing to pay $160, for example. So we are hearing that. So that was one of the questions that you said you wanted answered. I believe, am I correct, is knowing what that fee for structure looks like. Are you worried about the money, the timeline for getting that money, which as a private person or...
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about, I've always been able to provide my services autonomously, and I have been able to collaborate with the case manager, with whoever is needed regarding the veteran I'm working with. I mean, the vets that I see under this role are quite complex. Their needs are complex. What I do with working with one veteran to another veteran is quite variable depending upon their needs. So it's not cut and dry what you're going to do with each person. And going under the umbrella of a company, I don't know how that will impact that. I mean, that's part of it. I want to be able to still provide the same kind of service that I provide. And compensation for sure is another piece of it. I don't know anyone who would want to.
It's so reasonable. I mean, if you're going to be doing that service, you need to be compensated so that you can do it well. I think that's completely fair.
Well, and when you've done it with a certain level of compensation, and if that then is going to be, I don't know, cut in half, it's a concern.
So I have one last question for you. So currently you just work with the case manager. This model would mean that the case manager was working with another person from the provider. So then it would sort of be like you're working with two people. As a provider, do you have any concerns about adding extra people?
I don't, but I don't even know that. And I don't know whether if this role continues, which I hope it would, because I think it is really quite helpful for the veterans. If it does continue, I don't know how that will look. And I don't know how that will look. So I don't really have...
Thank you. My time is up. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blenay. And now let's go for a second round of questions. And I'd like to invite Mrs. Kathy Rogenthal for 5 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So my understanding of this situation is that VAC has a huge backlog. The goal here is to deal with that by taking it out of house and to lighten the administrative burden of case managers. In speaking with case managers who came as witnesses as well, and knowing what the Auditor General's report was, there was never what I would say is a significant effort on the behalf of VAC to build up our case managers to where we have enough of them that they can actually meet that criteria that VAC promised them, 25 veterans per case load. Many of them, most of them are at 40 to 60. So I would just like to ask you each to just briefly comment to that. This is a lot of money going out the door. A quarter of which, I believe 25 million of which is profit for these companies that were supposed to be in place already. And if you go to the website, it says we are working towards having this information available. Thank you for being patient with us. I don't see a lot of hope here. So just very briefly, each of you, if I could start with Scott and then Patricia and Carol, and that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, same concerns. I don't like it when what I'm hearing when people say that like this is a new model. VAC has been outsourcing. They're not a service provider. Right. They've always been doing this. We work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of healthcare providers that service the population that refer to us in this case. So right. That's not new. This is not a new thing. They've just given a contract to a massive provider, and we're expecting better results. So I don't see how that changes the the outbound side of care. I mean, what we've been talking about as a country for a long time, every Remembrance Day or around that period of time, for example, is the backlog on disability adjudication of awards and claims and benefits.
So Scott, can I ask you just then, do you see this as an added level of bureaucracy then?
Well, it has the chance to. It absolutely has the chance to. I'm not looking at the provider and saying that that's going to be the case, because I know that they're in healthcare and they want to streamline access to care, no doubt. But I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So all I'm trying to say is this: not the way that VAC has been doing business. This is not a new way of. They're not a service provider. VAC is not.
Thank you. Very helpful, Patricia, and then Carolyn.
Can you ask your question again?
Sure. Well, basically what we have here is a scenario where responsibility has been transferred, a significant amount of responsibility transferred away from case managers, with the understanding that they, to lighten their burden. But we know that they don't see it that way, because they have been told they'd be at 25 veterans, and you know how complex their situations are. And so they are still at 40 to 60, which of course, if that burden of administration was removed by having more case managers, that would probably deal with the issue in the same way and not be spending taxpayers' money on funding another organization. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a provider for veterans, but I'm not an employee of veterans. So that's really difficult for me to answer. Sure. I don't think I can.
One thing I'll just mention, Patricia, is the case managers. When they say 9,000, there's going to be 9,000 providers. One of them commented that that's way less than what we have now servicing our veterans. Would that concern you if that means that there are less people, less organizations that are going to be included in this new method of providing services for veterans? Just very briefly, sorry, I want to get.
Well, I think, I think you want to maintain and improve the service to veterans with however it's going to look. And I think also having the veterans have choice as to who they would like to be their provider is also important.
Wonderful. Okay.
Anyways.
Thank you. Carolyn?
I completely agree with Scott that this is not new. I mean, Medivie Blue Cross is a third party. So they've had third party contractors for quite a while. As Scott said, they're not service providers. They don't do the medical treatment and things like that. As to the number of providers they're going to use, from what I have learned, is that they're not going to be telling somebody that you can't go to that doctor anymore, you have to go to this one. So they're still going to be allowed to go to the providers they have now. I wanted to highlight one thing, though, the disability claims and the backlog. It is a separate department than case management with Veterans Affairs. So there's no overlapping responsibilities in that way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Morgenthau. Time is up, so thank you so much. And now I'd like to invite MP Darrell Sanson for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank all three presenters for your information. It's very much appreciated. So I'd like to start off with Mrs. Hughes a second. I'm noticing that maybe you know the person, if you can explain. Alexander Pasha from the Royal Canadian Legion. We have record that was present at the Department of Stakeholders meeting. Do you know that person?
Yes, Alexandra is one of our employees here. She works for me.
So are you aware that she was present at the technical briefing on November 14th?
Yes, she would have been there as part of the ministry advisory groups.
So we could assume she was consulted because she took part of the technical briefing.
I would not say she was consulted. I would see it more as an information session, and Alexa has just been working here for about 6 months. So
thank you for the answer. Mr. Maxwell, I'm glad you underlined it. You underlined that this is not new. There has been 2 providers out there since 2006. Do you agree with that? I believe I heard you say that. Is that correct?
Is it who's speaking? Is it Daryl?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Daryl. Good to see you again.
You too.
I mean, there's lots providers. I mean, who is that? There's from what Patricia's saying, the OTs. I mean, the healthcare providing community is massive in Canada. That sports into the population, and under a contract by VAC. So that's what I mean.
So the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Maxwell, is that there was two service providers. Now we have one. And that one service provider will allow 14,000 plus veterans to access 9,000 medical professionals across the country, as well as having access to over 600 offices. Are you aware of that?
News. That's new. That's information to me. But again, what I would say, Daryl, is not look at the numbers so much as look at the outcome and effects.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, just if I could finish, sometimes within every government, any situation, it's all about the numbers, less about the effect. So I would say what we're talking about is wait times decreasing, the cultural competency. I mean, so there's 9,000 providers. Wonderful. How many support uniformed service personnel on a daily basis?
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Sorry, I don't have much time. Do you believe that these medical professionals,
yes,
who would be supporting our veterans through this new contract, would you believe they have the patient, the veteran's best interests when dealing with veterans?
Always. I think every healthcare provider that has the best interest of the veteran, uniformed service member, their family member in their care.
Thank you.
It doesn't always mean that they're providing it.
No, but it doesn't mean they're not either, so we can't make that assumption. But that being said, do you think, Mr. Maxwell, that Veteran Affairs would have the capacity to offer in-house service?
I would say they haven't provided that. They shouldn't provide it, and they should rely on the subject matter experts in the field to do the work.
Thank you. Let's talk about maybe your organization, which does excellent work to support veterans, and I thank you and all your people that works in supporting our veterans. Does your organization provide training for therapy and training? Do you do it in-house, or are you contracting out to external service providers to deliver rehab, medical, and sociological supports?
In-house.
You do it all in-house. Nothing is contracted out?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you been contacted by the union to speak about this rehab contract?
No.
Never spoke with anyone on that front? Do you believe that veterans were receiving good services from the former contract, which had two parts to it, as you referred to earlier? One, of course, which was the medical and psychosocial rehabilitation, and the second one that was offered by Medicare. Do you believe they were receiving good services?
Now, if I get just 30 seconds, I would say the veterans that come into our programs, into our care, usually are referred from a healthcare provider, usually under that contract. Of those conversations we're having with those members that are coming to us by way of a healthcare provider under VAC contract, I would say yes. Well, and the relationship in that referral-based network is improving. So I would say under the current framework that we're working as a service providing organization, I would say answer that question, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. And for the two last interventions, it's going to be really quick. It's 2.5 minutes for each MP. So I invite Mr. Luc Desilets to open. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Maxwell, the little that you know about this new structure for offering services, is there something positive in it? Can you tell us something positive about it?
I was thinking about that today. It's a great question. The only thing I guess I could offer that would be a positive, it would be to answer if things change. It's impossible to say that something would be positive that just took effect. That would be irresponsible. But I would suggest that if change comes that reduces the backlog in the system as a whole, it improves timely access to care, and it improves the cultural competency of the delivery of the care, then we will have something to talk about maybe when I'm invited, hopefully, at the next round of these sessions.
Parfait. Merci.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. I have another question for you. As a service supplier, can you improvise with veterans? Does it require a certain expertise? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years experience?
I mean, it absolutely, unequivocally requires an expertise. The cultural competency, the occupational awareness, the experience in working with this population is fundamental to care. That's our specialty. That's what drives our success. Best laid plans on paper, but if that interaction does not compute, does not engage, you often get one chance with this population, and if it doesn't.
Je comprends.
Yes, I understand. I think that the staff that you use is very well trained and very competent. That's our impression. Do you think that a new structure like that could offer services of the same level of quality as yours?
Absolutely. I just think that it needs to be integrated. It needs to be collaborative, and it needs to be part of a process where the system is bringing in subject matter experts in the field to help improve care. Whether that's the old system, which wasn't doing that very effectively, I would add, or the new system. The system has been the problem, I would add, not just who the provider is.
Merci, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell, and thank you, Mr. Desilets.
Ms. Rachel Blenay for 2 minutes and a half. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chair. And if I could come to you, Mr. Maxwell, I always err on the side of caution and listen to the voices of the people who do the work and to the people who receive the service, and that's the workers and the veterans in this case. We have heard very clearly testimony that this new structure will cost 25% more than the current structure that we have in place. And we also know that VAC has had continuous challenges because they've been hiring people temporarily instead of permanently. And of course, that means higher levels of turnover, people taking, new people coming in and getting trained. It takes a lot of time, as you said, to train people to work with veterans. And I really appreciated the thing that you said just moments ago was we have one chance with this population. And I think that has to be absolutely our perspective and our main focus. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on if it would be beneficial to take some of that 25% more that's going to be added into this, it's going to cost that much more, and actually invest in staff to be permanent and to have that cultural training that you were speaking of earlier.
I mean, with respect to the current the cost increasing, I don't know if I can't add to if that's necessary or not, but I would 100% agree with you. Programs exist. Help is out there. Subject matter experts are all across the country that are working with us to do this work and provide the care. I find that we're often unconsulted. And investments can be made in programs that are already happening, care that already exists, and help that is already available. So maybe from a cost redundancy perspective, if that was how the system was looking at it or the department was looking at it, versus creating something brand new and adding even $1 more to what already is available, I would take a step back and say, like, have we done a sector analysis? Have we done a check on what's current that we can invest in? That's our perspective as a service provider. We could do a lot more if we had more, and we could help a lot more people to that end. So that's how I would answer that question.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was a great answer.
Voilà, c'est ici.
Well, this brings us to the end of our first panel. On behalf of the members of the committee and our team, I would like to thank our witnesses for having participated in this study on the new contract. And I particularly would like to thank Ms. Patricia Morin, who is a therapist, an occupational therapist, and also Ms. Hughes, who is the acting director of the Legion.
Qui est directeur exécutif. Donc, un grand merci. Nous allons.
Thank you all so much. We'll just suspend the meeting for a few moments to welcome our next panel of witnesses. The meeting.
we can now proceed to the second panel of this meeting, please. So a quick reminder to our witnesses that before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. And now I would like to welcome, first of all, one of our colleague MP Rachel Thomas for this panel. Thank you. And thank you. And welcoming also our witnesses. We have with us Mr. Christopher Banks, Sergeant retired. Mrs. Christine Gauthier, Caporal retired. Mr. Bruce Moncur, Caporal retired by video conference. So I'd like to start with you, Mr. Banks. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks and 5 minutes or less. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to start off by telling my story. I joined the Army at 16 in 2003. I was deployed to Bosnia as a peacekeeper. In 2008, I deployed to Kandahar as part of the battle group. When I returned home, I knew something was wrong and I sought out help. Over the next 10 years, I battled PTSD until I became suicidal in 2018, which led to a medical release in 2019. Throughout the pandemic, I completed vocational rehabilitation through CISUP, which by comparison was very smooth and stress-free. I was able to complete a university certificate program in public policy in 2021. I left that program feeling confident about my recovery, and although my psychologist and I were both keenly aware that my recovery was very fragile and a serious setback could derail my progress, I had continued to seek out further rehabilitation. And this year, I hope to begin the application process for vocational rehabilitation, and I applied to the program run by Canadian Veterans Vocational Rehabilitation Services. I went through the physical and cognitive assessments. Throughout the process, I had been making it clear to the case manager I was assigned I struggled in online learning during COVID and would like in-class learning. My psychologist has assessed that I would do better with part-time as opposed to full-time, and I had made clear that my family had recently purchased a new house and would be moving from Brampton to Ottawa in the summer and requested a September start. I had also requested to continue studies in public policies at University of Ottawa or Carleton, which I was assured would be considered. I scored very high on the cognitive test, and there were a large number of public policy positions within the public service that appealed to me. In April, I was contacted by the CVVRS case manager who blindsided me when she told me the program I would be approved for was office administration at Algonquin College, full-time, online, and starting immediately. Every request I had made for accommodation and every request my psychologist had made for accommodation was ignored. I was told that market research indicated there were no policy positions available in Ottawa, if you can believe it, and that their decision was to formally recognize skills I already possessed, which would meet their policy of making me employable at 90% of my previous pay, and they had no intention of supporting any more than that. She further informed me that if I did not agree to this program, I would be stripped of all of my benefits, including my medical pension, which I require to survive. I had an immediate panic attack and had to end the phone call. Over the next couple days, I called and emailed the CVVRS case manager and my Veterans Affairs case manager, trying to figure out what my options were to learn more about the policy and if they knew what this situation was doing to my mental health. My Veterans Affairs case manager broke the news to me that the policy did indeed state that if I refused to participate in the recommendation, I would be deemed not participating in the rehab program and would be removed, including my removal from IRB. And she told me that if I left the vocational program, I would likely not be accepted a second time if I applied. I reached out for help and advice in one of the veteran Facebook groups for medically released veterans. I told my story, asked if anyone had gone through the process, asked if they had any advice. I received over 40 comments, most of which telling me to strap in because it's about to get worse. Other veterans had expressed that the follow-ups, once enrolled in the program, caused a huge amount of stress, and once they graduated, the priority became to get them employed and out the door. I enrolled in the Algonquin program because my hands were tied, and honestly, I didn't have anything against going to college. I just was not keen on being put in a position that would degrade my health. I became suicidal again, and I initiated appeals through Veterans Affairs, but was told the process would take 12 weeks. I initiated another request for intervention through the Veterans Ombudsman. Thankfully, the Ombudsman stepped in for an intervention because the appeal reply I received from Veterans Affairs deemed suicide not an appropriate risk to remove me from the program. Since then, I completed the move for my family. I have recovered again and now working on further resilience training with my psychologist so that I can finally move on. I initiated and received an access to information request and received the reply this summer, which indeed showed that they had received the recommendations from my psychologist and ignored them. I had asked my psychologist if they had any information on this new provider. In a call with my case manager from Veterans Affairs last month, she told me about the new contract and that her role in my rehabilitation would be lessened.
Excuse me, Mr. Banks, it's way over 5 minutes. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. C'est une histoire.
This is a very touching history that you are recounting. Yes, Mr. Blake Richards?
I understand that the witness is over his time, but he's trying to tell us his story. And I mean, I get that maybe we could give him another minute or two just to wrap up. Would that? Could we just, like, he's got half a page.
Okay. No. I agree.
I think he's telling
No. Because, we didn't receive anything before, but if the members of the committee agreed, and me too, I would like to give you a few more seconds to complete your opening remarks. Please go ahead, Mr. Banks.
Thank you to the committee. I promise I'll be as quick as I can. I had asked my psychologist if she had any information about the new program provider, as she has a lot of experience with other veterans going through what I'm going through. She told me that she had already attempted to contact the PCVRS for another client, had left voicemails and emails, and had received no reply to her queries. Last week, I received a letter from the PCVRS telling me that I am being enrolled. I went out for information myself, and all I could find was what the limited information they put on their website. But every bit of information I'm hearing says it's going to be more of the same, maybe a little worse. So I just want to leave it at this. I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to be forced into another program that will not help me succeed and will only put me at new risk. The obscurity in this new contract and the gradual removal of case managers from the process, who, in my experience, have been the only people who truly care about us, leads me to believe that this is just another predatory company taking advantage of a vulnerable group in order to make profit at the expense of veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banks, and also thank you for your services. It's really important, and je vous souhaite.
I hope that you will keep hope in what you are doing.
Madame Christine Gauthier, for 5 minutes or less, please. Go ahead.
Mon numéro de...
My service number is HA62471. And I'm going to tell you about my history, but 35 years or 34 years reduced to 5 minutes really doesn't suffice. You can subdivide the service as one again. This is what is happening. The PCVRS is being subdivided into WCG International and Lightmark Health Group. And in the beginning, in the 2003-2004 years, they worked with the Blue Cross, but that didn't work out. There was no improvement for veterans, and on the contrary, I would say the result was that they doubled the work for most services. And now they want to separate these into 4 different entities. It's a total absurdity. I don't know how you understand your figures. I understand that 2 + 2 is 4. Am I the only one here to recognize the fact that the situation in Hockey Canada is becoming Canada Hockey, and so you're doing the same. All you're doing is changing the PCVRS into an entity that is much the same. For how long is this going to go on? How long will these figures be paid out? Who is going to get all the money? What services will be offered veterans? I've never heard anything about that until I saw the news this week in the press releases. 9,000 new stakeholders. What is their experience? I know we were talking about that. You were talking about that in the previous panel. But what are they going to have to do to bring themselves up to speed to be able to do the work? The professionals that are our providers have worked for years with veterans, and they feel that this transition period will be very difficult, and they're talking 6 months. Minister Macaulay said that this is going to help to reduce the backlog. 150? Well, I don't know what figures they are using. How are they going to be able to put up programs that will truly operate well to help veterans? It seems to me that there are many other areas, health and so on, where systems are not working. Give me a moment here, please. It took 12 years. 12 years to be able to put my file in order. I can give you all the papers. That's my active file, my current active file. In 2012, I got an improvement and an accommodation in my file. I can tell you that I've never received a letter from a minister, and that was a long period of time, and I'm not about to begin again this whole process. You have a physical handicap, you have a mental handicap, and you are the subject of sexual assault. What more can there be? A veteran is not a client. A veteran is a veteran. I have been a veteran since '97. I lived through many situations where the doctors, the lawyers came and that directly to me, and that worked. If you want to help people, you have to work directly with the people. And I just don't see how this new plan is going to operate. The only way to help veterans is direct contract with them. The return of managers, case managers who really know the cases and understand veterans' needs. There has to be face-to-face interaction. There has to be fairness, dignity, courtesy. All these words are to be found in the Charter of Rights. But do we have them? Veterans should take part in the discussions about what concerns us. I've never been able to do that. Veterans have real needs. there are maximum expenditures that are involved at times, but then there is the involvement of the subcontractors, and then that is further contracted out. Madame Boutier, I would like to ask the members of the committee, would you agree to giving a few more seconds to Madame Boutier so she can finish her presentation? Yes, thank you. Go ahead. I just want to say that the work has to be done, but the way the work has to be done, though, is in the way I described, and it is my duty to point that out to you. I've finished. Thank you so much, Madame Gauthier. Thank you so much for your service. I and all my colleagues here know that it is important to hear you, to help you, and to help us make the necessary corrections.
Moncoeur for 5 minutes or less, please, by video conference. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Corporal Retired Bruce Moncoeur. I served in the Canadian Forces for almost a decade, in which I fought in Afghanistan and took part in the largest battle in the war, Operation Medusa. My company, Charles Company, would fight ferociously, and over 2 days of fighting, we were deemed combat ineffective. My platoon, the Crazy Eights, would be reduced from 40 to 5 in those 48 hours, and after a friendly fire incident, I myself would sustain a life-threatening wounds that would require the removal of 5% of my brain, and I would have to relearn how to read, write, walk, and talk. I sit before you a mere 8 weeks from finishing a teaching degree. I also started the Afghanistan Veterans Association of Canada and the non-for-profit Valor in the Presence of the Enemy. Each of you would have received about 50 to 100 letters about Jess La Rochelle. I am one of the original 15 veterans on the Ministerial Advisory Board created in 2015 and currently co-chair the Service Excellence Committee. I have been a veterans advocate for over a decade. First for myself, and that when my lump sum pension was a mere $22,000, then for others as we try to navigate the insurance company we call Veterans Affairs. I have endured Veterans Affairs Minister Julian Fantino walking out on me, Veterans Affairs Minister Ken Hare clapping as the then CDS Jonathan Vance berated me at a stakeholder summit when I told him that not having a VAC representative present at the 10th anniversary reunion for Operation Medusa was a mistake. I wanted to make the guys aware of the services available to them and was reduced for asking for a table with magnets and a phone number. That too was denied. I felt an inch tall after I got jacked up. It was not 6 weeks later that one of the soldiers at the reunion committed suicide. I don't know if we could have helped him or prevented it, but I would have liked to have tried. To date, I have met or known or tried to help 11 soldiers that have taken their lives. You see, VAC has been offering MAID in many forms for years, but now they have gotten rid of all pretenses. It was later that I had to sit through the new Veterans Affairs Minister Seamus O'Regan's speech at the Sam Sharp breakfast, a breakfast in honor of a colleague of yours that committed suicide after his service in World War I. The minister would then tell a room full of veterans that he could relate to our PTSD because of his alcoholism. It's only gotten worse since then. The state of Veterans Affairs is apocalyptic and worse than I've ever seen it. In my opinion, the deliberate actions taken by the minister to put the department in such disrepair was only means to justify the $571 million LifeMark privatization. In a book written in 2015, Party of One by Stephen Harris, I am interviewed and I joke with him about how they could have thousands of more points of contact if they put VAC material in McDonald's. I could never have imagined that my joke would become a sick reality. Yet wait times keep getting longer. They ignored the file so thoroughly that case manager Kevorkian could operate with impunity and an attempted serial killer using legally sanctioned MAID as her murder weapon, all under the minister's nose. He was too focused on the $500 million of taxpayers' monies going to the Weston family and Loblaws, the same people that were fixing the prices of bread and raising the prices of groceries so family can't buy meat and are unable to keep children's Tylenol on the shelves. This new deal is only going to add a division between the veteran and the government. We have seen in the past that the new implementation of services has taken years to iron out. Service Canada offices took at least a decade. The new Veterans Charter never worked, hence this new deal. In my opinion, we need to look at how much it will cost to get out of this deal. And if you are determined to go through with it, then what does the contract say when LifeMark does not meet its obligations? Will you hold them accountable? See, we've had nobody at the table helping us making these decisions. And in the meantime, the minister must do the honorable thing and resign. He tweets more about potatoes than veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs must be moved back to Ottawa. I care little about the ramifications it will have on the economy of PEI. There is more Canadian veteran blood in PEI than Afghanistan, Bosnia, and Korea combined. And if the minister resigns, I have no faith in a prime minister that has missed over half of our Remembrance Day ceremonies. You must call a royal commission into Veterans Affairs. Lives depend on it. Thank you.
Excuse me, Corporal Moncur. And let's go to questions. And members, because we have two of our colleagues who have obligations to leave, so we're going to go till 5:35. So you will have 6 minutes each, and you can split your time. So I'd like to invite, first of all, Mr. Fraser-Tolmie for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. And when we have vets here, we normally recognize their service and we say thank you for your service. And I want to do that, but I don't want you to think that it's just a platitude. We do not, through your stories, go through the experience of what you've gone through. What you've shared with us is sometimes very horrifying to us. And so I want to let you know that we're grateful for the sacrifices that you've made, and that we're grateful that you're here in order to help us provide a better service for those that are in similar situations to you. And so I want to say thank you for being here today. Mr. Banks, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you feel abandoned by Veterans Affairs and how they've treated you recently?
I guess it would depend on if you're asking me about the institution or the people that I actually work with, the practitioners. As far as the institution goes, yes. But for the practitioners, I've worked with a number of case managers I've been assigned over the years, and they're trying. They're trying within the bounds of the system that they have to operate in.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Gauthier, can I ask you, that suitcase there that's beside you, is that all your files?
No, this is just the 4 years one, last 4 years.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, that breaks my heart to hear that, actually.
And you're welcome to every single sheet of those.
Mr. Moncur, with the way that this contract has been rolled out, do you have concerns about the future service that vets will have based on the way that this has been rolled out?
That's correct. I serve on the Service Excellence Committee, and this falls directly under our mandate letter. And this would have been years in the making, and not once were we told about it. In fact, the Legion member from your last round of questioning, Ms. Hughes, she's also on that committee. And I can tell you emphatically that not once were we told about this until we heard it with the rest of the public.
Okay. Ms. Gauthier, when dealing with Veterans Affairs, what is your expectation from opening your file to closing your file? Because obviously you've got a lot of experience with it, and that's not trying to be flip. I mean, I'm talking about time to be responded to, time to be dealt with, and time to have your file closed. What's your expectation?
It's 24 years in the making right now. None of the initial claims of the disability have been yet addressed because the bureaucracy.
Wait, I'm sorry to cut you off. You're telling me that none of your claims have been dealt with since the beginning?
No, sir. Not all of my claims.
Not all.
In 24 years.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off, but again, Okay, keep going.
What was the question?
Well, you know what? Now I'm kind of lost here because I'm just appalled at what service delivery is happening here.
Well,
we're seeing increased numbers.
For one thing, I think you were asking as well is from the resolution and the opening of the files, what they have been talking in this was a bit of the initial demands. But has anybody realized that we yearly have to go through again and again in this system, in this resolution, because le renouvellement,
the renewal of the document,
we have to go through as if it's a new demand each time. It's endless. It's endless. And when it started with Blue Cross in 2004, it has just doubled up the work and the blame left and right.
Okay. Mr. Banks, recently we were told that VAC was told to temporarily suspend service between October and November, October 25th to November 29th. You mentioned about a delay in response. Was that the time period that you were involved in?
No, sir.
Okay. But if it were to happen, which you have experienced a delay, does that concern you and how did that make you feel?
Which specific delay are you referring to?
Well, you mentioned in your comments that you were waiting for a response and you never got anything back, and that you just were put off, and that's why I asked if you felt abandoned, and so I want to know how you feel about.
Are you referring to the appeal I filed with Veterans Affairs for the 12-week wait?
Yes.
Yes, I feel abandoned. More so because I explicitly told everybody in every step of the appeal process is how my mental health had essentially collapsed. I was, again, suicidal. And their response was to say, not good enough. Yes, I absolutely feel abandoned.
Okay, so let me just ask this as a blanket question. If a case manager doesn't know what the contract provider is there to do, how confident do you feel that you're going to be looked after? Let's go with you.
Oh, sorry. Zero. No confidence at all. How can they? The agents that we used to have that used to be working with us and knew our case files were able to have the control and the power to help us directly. I've lived this. I've seen it work, and it has worked. But since Blue Cross came, they keep telling me how their hands are tied, and they're not able to provide the services. Because also my case is apparently a severe one. Even more so, can we just deal with it once and for all?
Thank you, Mr.
I know I'm running out of time, but I
Yes.
just want to say thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for answering my questions, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Tolmi. And now let's go to Mr. Wilson Miao for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, each and every of you, for your appearance today at the committee. From each of your opening remark, it's really sad to hear what had happened. I'd like to ask my first question to Mr. Bank on your dealing with VAC, which you mentioned in your opening remark. What advice would you give to the department to further improve this support and service to your need?
I would say that from an outsider looking in whose experience is with being a client, this pattern of continual erosion of benefits is not the answer. Every time there's a new contract, one more thing is removed, and this is only going to end up with there being nothing left. This privatization scheme and this outsourcing scheme is just putting care in the hands of people who have a profit motive, not a care motive, and you can see the effects in real time.
Thank you. And with the support you have received so far, were they provided through the previous rehab contract that FACT offered through the external service providers?
I went through the process, but the Ombudsman removed me from the program.
That's sorry to hear about that. Were there any medical service that you have received?
Through the previous CVVRS? I don't believe so. All of my other mental health services are either through Blue Cross or direct billing to Veterans Affairs.
And with this transition right now, what do you feel that the FACT can do better on providing service to you?
Well, for one thing, I heard the committee ask about a dozen times today about who was consulted at the various stakeholders, and I don't know if any veterans with lived experience were ever considered for consultation.
And if there's a chance right now, what suggestion you might have for the department or for FACT?
I believe I've already, not to be rude, I believe I've already answered that by saying that this privatization outsourcing scheme is doomed to result in not adequate service levels and further suicides.
Thank you. And if you don't mind sharing, can you expand a little about your injury? And I understand how disappointed you are with the service you've been receiving right now. Anyway, yep.
I'll just say, as far as my injury goes, I was in combat, and as much as I took the mental health training seriously before deployment, I think everyone with lived experience will tell you that there's no amount of pre-training you can go through to just walk away from that shit. Pardon my language.
No problem. Thank you so much. How's my time doing, Mr. Chair?
You have 2 more minutes to go.
Okay. Is it possible for me to share my remaining time with my colleague, Sean Casey?
Yes. MP Sean Casey, please go ahead, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Back to you, Sergeant Banks. If the imposition of this contract has no effect on the role of the case manager, so if I was to tell you that after this contract is rolled out, in spite of what you may have heard from various sources, that case managers would still approve rehabilitation plans, they would still monitor and evaluate rehabilitation progress, they would still coordinate participants' needs, what impact would that have on your opinion of the contract?
You know, I was sharing anecdotally with my wife the other day about this new contract that it feels a whole lot like when that bar down the road closes by the health department and opens 2 weeks later under new management. I do not believe the status quo is going to be good enough for veterans. And if you took my testimony at face value, I think you can see why.
We are part of your testimony. Certainly the first question that you answered from Mr. Tolmie is that case managers are trying. And I did take that at face value. And if those case managers that are trying are now supported by having administrative tasks taken away from them, in order to be able to focus on the veteran. Do you think that's a good thing?
I would disagree with the phrasing that it's a good thing, that it's benefiting them to take administrative processes away from them, because the view might be that we're helping them by taking more things off their plate, but what you're doing is taking away control from people who actually have face-to-face interaction with the veterans, the clients, and are now being represented by people who don't care.
Thank you, Mr. Kissy. Thank you, Mr. Banks. And now, allons-y avec...
Let's continue with Mr. Luc Desilets for the next 6 minutes. Madame Gauthier, you're a paraplegic, if I'm not mistaken, and you've been waiting for an elevator in your home for how long? 5 years. In addition, it's a renewal of equipment. It's the third platform that I would have to have replaced. And so it was supposed to be a renewal. But when you said earlier that you have to annually fill out the same paper burden, is this an example of it? Yes, it is. I have to be able to have something to get in and out of my house. I can't go up and down stairs. And you've been waiting for that platform for how long? For 5 years. You have no platform whatsoever? You've never had a platform? No, sir, I have not. For 5 years, 5 years ago, the initial application was made. It was accepted. The project was accepted. But the subcontractor that was sent to us decided to do that in a different area where it wasn't adequate. He wanted to do it behind. And it was therefore decided that they had to go back to square one and start the project all over again. But you've had case managers that have gone to your home. Yes, sir. And that no longer happens? Since when? 5 years ago, I think the last one came. Yep. Mr. Moncoeur, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You said earlier something that I found a bit much. You talked about MAID being offered to veterans in a variety of forms. That's what you said. I'm not mistaken, am I?
Okay. Pouvez-vous m'expliquer?
No, you're right.
Pouvez-vous m'expliquer?
So what did you mean? Can you explain? What are these numerous forms? Do you have any examples to give us?
Something they call sanctuary trauma. You're looking to someone for help, and they're not offering it. It's common in soldiers looking for help for PTSD, and also for young children that have been, say, one parent is taking advantage of a child, and they go to the other parent to tell them about it, and they ignore it. That's what it feels like sometimes when Veterans Affairs does this. It's a medical term called sanctuary trauma, which I kind of make it sound like it kind of is like PTSD's ugly cousin. And when I started my advocacy, I couldn't grow a beard. And it took me almost 10 years to get my pension sorted out. So there's a lot of frustration and futility that goes with trying to navigate through Veterans Affairs. And eventually it causes soldiers to lose hope and think about taking their lives. And it's the Triple D policy: delay, deny, die. Dead veterans cost no money.
If you had one recommendation to make, just one recommendation to make to our committee, what would it be?
A royal commission.
Okay. Merci.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gauthier, do you want to add something to this? With respect to MAID, I have a letter in my file because I had to face that as well. I have a letter saying that if you are so desperate, madam, we can offer you MAID, medical assistance in dying. I wrote a letter to Mr. Trudeau to that end, saying what I've just said. But can you give us a copy of this letter? Can you make it public? I'm sorry, Mr. Desilets. A point of order?
My apologies. I think Mr. Desilets might have already handled it. I was just going to suggest that the witness provide a copy of that to the clerks of the committee.
I will certainly provide a copy.
Allez-y, Monsieur Desilets.
Go ahead, Mr. Desilets. Please do. 2 minutes. You say you wrote to the Prime Minister. You said that you were offered that. I sent a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau, and that they offered me MAID and would supply equipment. Well, I know it's very difficult for you, but it's very relevant for us. If you could give us some more detail, who offered you that? Madame, if it's too difficult for you to continue living, we can offer you medical aid in dying. Is that a case manager who did that? Yes. Do you have other examples? Well, I have one from the RCMP. It's a chronicle here that I have, and that there were only 4 persons involved. If it becomes public, probably there will be more people stepping forward saying the same thing. That's all, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Blaney. 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I just want to thank all of you for your service, for your commitment to our country, and for coming here to speak to us today. I am feeling a bit overwhelmed by what I've just heard, and I just want to extend my deepest apologies. I'm in shock, and I thank you for bringing forward this reality. So I guess I think where I'll start is, Mr. Moncourt said something that I've heard from far too many veterans, which is a sense of having an experience that when you go to get help from Veterans Affairs, often it feels more like you're arguing with an insurance company than actually working with people who want to see the best for you. But I also heard very clearly from testimony that case managers are often the only people that you interact with in your role as veterans trying to get help that seem to care. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about, I guess, first of all, why the relationship with the case manager is so important, and if you have any concerns, because we know that when it moves, and it has on the 29th, moved over to PCVRS, that not only will you have a case manager, you veterans will also be assigned a rehab service specialist. So I'm a little confused about how that relationship is going to work. I know that you don't know how that relationship is going to work at this point, but if I could start with you, Mr. Banks, and then we'll move over, just if you have any concerns about that 2 role that you have to now work with, and if you could talk about why case managers matter.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we don't know what the new role of the new the service delivery person or rehabilitation service specialist you mentioned. Don't know what they're going to do. Don't know what their role is going to be. Don't know how it's going to impact it. And that in itself is part of the scary part. There's just such a big element of the unknown that it's leaving us to just assume that it's going to be more par for the course. And to answer the second question about the importance of case managers, I would just say that they're the practitioners. They're the ones who actually have to look us in the eyes. And they're the only ones who actually experience the hardship by our sides. It's easy for, forgive me, legislators and policymakers to sit back and say, this is the best course of action, but on the ground, that's not the case, and it's the case managers who have to watch us suffer and die.
Thank you. Ms. Gauthier.
Of course, they are. In 24 years, I have gone through major caseloads, case managers. I had some golden ones. I wouldn't be able today to say whether they were more caring and more dedicated and did more, or whether it is just today they just don't give a shit and they're just not implicated. I had two awesome ones, and then suddenly they retired the same year, and I've just been falling through the cracks again since. This rehab, it's a real joke. I mean, I already have the staff around for the rehab in St. Anne's, CGD and TSO. I'm lucky enough to live close to that. They are the providers of the services. What, are they putting the plug on that as well? Are we supposed to hear this and I'm going to have to start dealing with somebody who's following a model online right now to guide me into what? It just makes no sense. And how has this been able to come $570 million? How does this just happen secretly? Like, it blows me away.
Thank you. Mr. Moncur.
2 weeks ago, the Service Excellence Committee had a meeting about this, this is the first time we'd been briefed on it. And Assistant Deputy Minister Stephen Harris told us that, to his knowledge, most case managers were aware of this and that the MAID situation was just an isolated case. 4 and 5 days later, we found out through the media that that was all lies. So we're having literally a assistant deputy minister lying to veterans' faces 5 days before the truth comes out. So I like I said, it's disheartening, to say the least.
Well, thank you. And I only have a minute left, so I'm just going to come back to you, Mr. Bank, one more time, and I apologize for that. But one of the things that I thought was really important, well, your whole story was incredibly important, and I thank you for sharing it. And I really hope all of you have support after this, because coming out and sharing these really personal stories is such a dedication to serving all veterans, so I really deeply appreciate it. But you talked about your psychologist doing the work to advocate for you, but also to reach out to PCVRS to try to get more information. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about if you've heard anything updated, if they've reached out. The last service provider talked about doing an expression of interest, if any of that has been done by your knowledge with the person who's serving you so well.
I spoke to my psychologist Tuesday, and she had not received queries that she had put in weeks ago for her other veteran clients.
Thank you. I believe that's my time.
Thank you. Et c'est ici que prend fin.
Well, we are now have come to the end of our second panel. On behalf of all the members of the committee, I would like to thank our witnesses for coming here today, for sharing their stories with us. I admire your courage. You have proven courage, and those are very moving things that you have said to us today. We are empathetic, we in the committee, and this certainly will have an impact on your immediate surrounding friends and family. So please, we will continue. The committee will make its report. And before leaving you, I want to thank personally Mr. Christopher Banks, retired sergeant, Madame Christine Gauthier, corporal, retired, and through video conference, Mr. Bruce Moncur, who is also retired, a corporal. But on this note, I want to thank all the team, the interpreters, the IT team, and the clerks that accompany us. Thank you. This is the end of our meeting.